Hello again from southeastern Finland in northern Europe. I continue my series of historical videos, this time focusing on selected events of 1954. That year was a common year, in other words, a 365-day year, starting on Friday of the Gregorian calendar. And let's look at the events now. On January the 1st, 1954, the Soviet Union ended its demand for war reparations from West Germany. On January the 7th, the first public demonstration of a machine translation system was held in New York, United States, at the head office of IBM. It was later known as the Georgetown IBM experiment. On January the 14th, 1954, a well-known and popular, albeit controversial actress, Marilyn Monroe, married baseball player Joe DiMaggio at San Francisco City Hall. On February the 3rd, 1954, Queen Elizabeth II of Britain became the first reigning monarch to visit Australia. On February the 23rd, 1954, the first mass vaccination of children against polio began in Pittsburgh, United States. On March the 9th, 1954, American journalists Edward Murrow and Fred Friendly produced a 30-minute see-it-now documentary entitled A Report on Senator Joseph McCarthy. On March the 13th, 1954, French troops began the battle against the Viet Minh in Dien Bien Phu. On March the 23rd, the Viet Minh captured Dien Bien Phu's main airstrip. On March the 29th, 1954, a C-47 transport with French nurse Geneviève de Gallard on board was wrecked on the runway at Dien Bien Phu. On March the 30th, the first operational subway line in Canada opened in Toronto, Ontario. In April 1954, Bill Haley and his Comets recorded Rock Around the Clock, thus starting the rock and roll craze. On April the 7th, 1954, US President Dwight Eisenhower gave his domino theory speech during a news conference. On April the 22nd, 1954, Senator Joseph McCarthy, a Republican from Wisconsin, began hearings investigating the United States Army for being soft on communism. On May the 1st, 1954, the Unification Church, headed by the controversial South Korean pastor or Reverend Sun Myung Moon, was founded in South Korea. On May the 4th, General Alfredo Stroessner, whose father was a German immigrant, deposed Federico Chavez in a coup d'etat in Paraguay, South America, officially taking power as president on August the 15th. He would hold the office of president until being himself deposed in a bloodless coup d'etat in 1989. On May the 6th, Roger Bannister ran the first sub-4-minute mile in Oxford, Britain. On May the 7th, the Battle of Dien Bien Phu ended in a French defeat. And then on May the 17th, 1954, in the Brown versus Board of Education case, the United States Supreme Court ruled unanimously that segregated schools, in other words, schools which only would accept white students or then only black students, were unconstitutional. On May the 29th, 1954, the controversial and secretive Bilderberg Group, which holds one informal meeting per year, drawing top politicians, civil servants, business leaders, and labor market leaders, was created and held its first meeting. No media are allowed in the meetings, or at least no public media. On June the 7th, 1954, an inwardly troubled British computer scientist, Alan Turing, committed suicide. He had, before that, developed an early model of the computer. He is widely considered to be the father of theoretical computer science and artificial intelligence. During the Second World War, he worked for the Government Code and Cipher School, or G, C, and CS, at Bletchley Park, Britain's code-breaking centre that produced ultra-intelligence. He played a pivotal role in cracking intercepted coded messages that enabled the Allies to defeat the Nazis in many crucial engagements, including the Battle of the Atlantic, and in so doing helped win the war. After the Second World War, Mr. Turing worked at the National Physical Laboratory, where he designed the automatic computing engine, which was one of the first designs for a stored program computer. In 1952, he was prosecuted for homosexual acts. At that time, homosexuality was still a crime in Britain. The Labouchere Amendment had mandated that gross indecency was a criminal offense in Britain. He accepted chemical castration treatment with DES as an alternative to prison. He died officially from cyanide poisoning 16 days before his 42nd birthday. An inquest determined his death as a suicide, but it has been noted that the known evidence is also consistent with accidental poisoning. In 2009, following an internet campaign, British Prime Minister Gordon Brown made an official public apology on behalf of the British government for the appalling way he was treated. Queen Elizabeth II granted Turing a posthumous pardon in 2013. The Alan Turing Law is now an informal term for a law enacted in Britain in 2017 that retroactively pardoned men cautioned or convicted under historical legislation that outlawed homosexual acts. On June the 9th, 1954, Joseph Welch, special counsel for the United States Army, lashed out at Senator Joseph McCarthy during hearings on whether communism had infiltrated the US Army, saying, "Have you at last no decency?" On June the 14th, the words "under God" were added to the United States Pledge of Allegiance. On June the 15th, the UEFA, or Union of European Football Associations, was formed in Basel, Switzerland. On July the 1st, 1954, the Common Nordic Labour Market Act came into effect, affecting the Nordic or Scandinavian countries of Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. On July the 4th, 1954, finally food rationing in Great Britain ended with the lifting of restrictions on sale and purchase of meat 14 years after it had begun early in World War II and nearly a decade after the war had ended. On July the 15th, 1954, the Boeing 367-80 or just -80 prototype of the Boeing 707 series made its maiden flight. On July the 19th, 1954, Elvis Presley's first single was released. It was entitled That's All Right. By Sun Records, it had been recorded on July the 5th in Memphis, Tennessee. On July the 21st, the Geneva Conference in Switzerland sent French forces to the south and Vietnamese forces to the north of a ceasefire line and demanded that elections be held to decide Vietnam's government by July 1956. However, not enough Vietnamese political or military leaders abided by this agreement, and that was why Vietnam was divided into the communist North Vietnam and then the pro-Western South Vietnam, and that was how the Vietnam War began by the late 1950s. On July the 31st, 1954, Italian mountaineers Lino Lacedelli and Achille Compagnoni became the first to reach the summit of the second highest mountain in the world. On August the 1st, 1954, the First Indochina War ended with the Vietnam People's Army in North Vietnam, the Vietnamese National Army in South Vietnam, the Kingdom of Cambodia in Cambodia, and the Kingdom of Laos in Laos, emerging victorious against the French army. On August the 6th, 1954, Émilie Dion, one of the Dion quintuplets, died of asphyxiation following an epileptic seizure. She was the first one of the 5 to perish, and 3 of them live into the 21st century. They had been born in couple. Let's see now. Oliver Edouard and Elsire Dion in Corbeil, Ontario. They were born 2 months premature on May the 28th, 1934. Yeah, they were born just outside Callander, Ontario. Ontario is a large province in central and partly eastern Canada, near the village of Corbeil. After 4 months with their family, custody was signed over to the Red Cross, who paid for their care and oversaw the building of a hospital for the sisters. Under a year after this agreement was signed, the Ontario government stepped in and passed the Dion Quintuplets Guardianship Act 1935, which made them wards of the Crown until the age of 18. The Ontario provincial government and those around them began to profit by making them a significant tourist attraction, which of course later would be called a form of exploitation and would not today probably be allowed, at least not by any public institution in the Western democracies. Only 2 of the 5 girls are still alive, Annette and Cécile. Emily was the first one to die in 1954. Marie died in 1970, and Yvonne died in 2001. Okay. On August the 16th, the first issue of Sports Illustrated magazine was published in the United States. On August the 24th, 1954, the longtime and dictatorial Brazilian president Getúlio Vargas committed suicide after being accused of involvement in a conspiracy to murder his chief political opponent, journalist Carlos, or is it Carlos Lacerda or Lacerda? On September the 6th, 1954, the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization treaty was signed in Manila, Philippines, and that organization was, or CETO organization, was officially established in Bangkok, Thailand. On September the 11th, 1954, the Miss America pageant was broadcast on television for the first time. On October the 23rd, 1954, West Germany joined the NATO. The Paris Agreement established the Western European Union to implement the Treaty of Brussels 1948, providing for mutual self-defense and other collaboration between Belgium, France, West Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, and the United Kingdom. Of these 7 countries, the first 6 would be the first members of the European Common Market or European Economic Community, the predecessor of today's European Union. And of these 7 countries, the United Kingdom is scheduled to leave the European Union at the end of October 2019, after a membership of nearly 47 years. And West Germany, of course, became the reunified Germany in October 1990. On October the 31st, 1954, the Algerian National Liberation Front began a revolt against French rule. On November the 5th, 1954, Japan and Burma, now Myanmar, signed a peace treaty in Rangoon, the Burmese capital, to end their long extinct state of war. On November the 14th, 1954, the Egyptian president Muhammad Naguib was deposed and Gamal Abdel Nasser replaced him. He would rule Egypt with an iron hand for nearly 16 years until his death in September 1970. On December the 1st, 1954, the first Hyatt Hotel, the Hyatt House Los Angeles, opened on the grounds of Los Angeles International Airport. It is the first hotel in the world built on an airport property. On December the 2nd, 1954, the United States Senate voted 67-22 to publicly rebuke or censure Joseph McCarthy for conduct that tends to bring the Senate into dishonor and disrepute. On December the 4th, 1954, the first Burger King fast food restaurant opened in Miami, Florida. On December the 23rd, 1954, J. Hartwell Harrison and Joseph Murray performed the world's first successful kidney transplant in Boston, Massachusetts. On December the 24th, 1954, Laos gained full independence from France.